What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, continuing my deep dive into all things Neil Young. Today, I'm going to discuss one of the discs in Neil Young's Archives Volume 3, disc number 12, which is called Trans/Johnny's Island. And the reason I'm going to discuss this one today is because elsewhere on this channel, I am going through Neil's studio albums in chronological order. And the most recent one I did was Trans, and this covers both the recording sessions for all of the material that was on Trans. There were two basic recording periods, late 1981, hence the 81 on this, in which he recorded all of his synthesizer material, the synclavier stuff, the stuff with the vocoder, Crazy Horse came in, and essentially the 6 songs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 songs that were the synthesizer songs on Trans all came from recording sessions in late 81. Those 6 songs, all previously released, are on this. That's not the most fascinating part about this release, though it is still fascinating, and I'll get to that shortly. The second part of this are songs that he recorded in early 1982 with a band that he called the Royal Pineapples, which included Nils Lofgren, included Ben Keith on pedal steel. Who else was in that band? Bruce Palmer on bass, Molina on drums, Joe Lala on percussion. Yeah, that was the band. And they recorded a bunch of live tracks, like a full band live tracks that had very, recorded in Hawaii, very island vibe, for lack of a better word, but a very breezy, poppy, kind of cheerful, very surrounded by water in the sun type energy. 3 of those songs from that recording session did make it onto Trans. The opening track, the one about love, the opening track on each side, the opening track, Little Thing Called Love, that came from these sessions. Side A, the opening track on side B, Hold On To Your Love, and the closing track, Like an Inca. The rest of the material was not released. One of the songs that was recorded was Silver and Gold, which would eventually be redone in a much more straightforward acoustic manner for the album Silver and Gold. But during these sessions, they did do a very bouncy, islandy type version of it. But I wanted to talk really about 2 things with regards to this release. So the first half of this release is the Trans material, and it is sequenced in the order that the songs were recorded. And the order that the songs were recorded is the first, late September, back-to-back days, he recorded Sample and Hold and Mr. Soul. I would argue the 2 least interesting tracks on Trans. Sample and Hold, kind of, dare I say, predictable. The song is about using synths. I mean, the title, Sample and Hold. It is a little more, I think, more predictable use of sort of synthesizers and drum machines and the synclavier and the vocoder. And it's still a good song, but out of all the other ones that he did for Trans, I think it's the least interesting. On the following day, he did Mr. Soul. Took an old song, I think a perfect old song, a Buffalo Springfield song, a song with the title Mr. Soul, and gave it sort of a Devo synth reworking. I think they're the 2 least interesting tracks on here. He did those 2 first. Took a break for a week. He came back later on in end of September, middle of April, added 2 more songs. Computer Cowboy, We Are in Control. I would argue that these are better than the first 2, but they're not the best that he would do on Trans. So he got a little more aggressive with incorporating Crazy Horse into the sound. Both of these songs have maybe, Computer Cowboy has more of a straightforward rock energy. We Are in Control, I think, does a better job of like making the lyrics and the idea of like synthesizers and electronics being in control of everything. I think the music and the lyrics fit really well together. So he's developing his ideas a little more in his use of synth for the next 2 songs. And then the last 2 songs he did, which I think are by far the best 2 synth songs on Trans, are Computer Age and Transformer Man. And both of those, like Computer Age has an almost dancey quality to it. Transformer Man has an almost human quality to it. It is apparently about his son, Ben, who the reason Neil got into synths and electronics in the first place, as far as music, was he was working with this stuff with his son who had cerebral palsy to communicate with him. And so as he goes through this process, Neil Young, of experimenting with the synclavier, as experimenting with a vocoder, experimenting with using these kind of sounds in his music, as he wrote and recorded these songs, or at least as he recorded them, don't know when he wrote them, they get better, like much better. Like Computer Age and Transformer Man, I think are really, really strong synth songs. We Are in Control and Computer Cowboy, interesting, definitely not bad. Mr. Soul and Sample and Hold, the first two, the least interesting, the most predictable. And had he not experimented even more, I'm not sure Trans would be the success I think it is. So even though the trans segment of this doesn't shed any light on the music, right? I mean, as far as like, it's all been previously released. Listening to them in order shows that Neil really grew as a composer in this medium. And I kind of almost wish he had followed it up with another album and really, really pushed the direction of this further than what he did, because it showed that just in a period of, like, his first song was late September, Transformer Man he recorded in December. In the 2.5 months, he had really, really grown in using this medium. So I think that's a fascinating interest. Listen, and it's one of the really neat things about the archive series is even songs that have been previously released, they are packaged or sequenced in a way that maybe sheds more light on like Neil's songwriting skills or the ability of Neil to do so much. So that's the first half of the album. The second half of the album is all of the songs that the Royal Pineapples recorded that were not released yet, or at least not in this version. One of the songs, Silver and Gold, would be released on Silver and Gold. One of the other songs, Hold On To Your Love, was actually released on Trans, opened up side B. And then all the other ones on here might have occurred in a live performance. I think one of them, Soul of a Woman, was on Treasure. The version we get on here is a much rougher, both sound-wise and performance-wise version, the live version of the song that would drop a couple years later on the Treasure live release. But these are some pretty interesting songs. And if you take all of these songs, plus the two that are on Trans that aren't on this, you have a long enough album, enough material for a full album. And there's a timeline where this is what he drops. He was preparing this album, the Johnny's Island album, when I think he was redirected to do something else and we got Trans instead. But the material on here is pretty interesting. It's pretty light. It's pretty almost inconsequential, the lyrics. Some of them just see like, I don't know if fluff pieces is the right word, but it just seems like Neil's in Hawaii having a good time. Some pretty fun stuff that really compelling listen, and it's stuff I really enjoy. The first track on here is a song called Johnny. This kind of sounds like a Stephen Malkmus pop song when Stephen Malkmus does his more like poppy songs that have like hooks and melodies. This is kind of what that sounds like. Johnny has cocaine and a gun. It's kind of catchy. It has a very breezy vibe. Kind of defines the tone of what the rest of the Johnny's Island material is going to sound like. Island in the Sun is the second song, unreleased song from this period. Yeah, it sounds like a song that's about an island in the sun. Nils Lofgren has some tasty, tasty guitar playing. On quite a number of these songs, Neil is only on acoustic. Neil Young is only on acoustic, and Nils Lofgren is on electric. And Nils gets some really, really awesome spots to shine, and his guitar is tasty as always. Get some nice, very yachty. Island in the Sun is a very yacht roddy song. Some nice pedal steel by Ben Keith in there. Very breezy. I think the chorus is looking for that island in the sun. Nothing predictable lyric-wise, or nothing unpredictable lyric-wise. The lyrics and the vibe match perfectly. We're not getting anything groundbreaking, but it's a nice vibe. And there's a timeline where instead of dropping Everybody's Rockin' after Trans, he drops Johnny's Island, and that's a much more interesting journey. We get a couple raps in there where Neil explains things here. A current Neil explains the recording process from long ago. We get a version of Silver and Gold, very a little more country cowboyish. When they get to the line better than silver and gold, it's more like better than silver and gold. You can see like a bunch of like Disney 50s cowboys singing this, kind of cheesy. Nowhere near as sort of simple and stark as the 2000 version that would be released in 2000. If You Got Love, really nice, bouncy, acoustic 70s soft rock yacht vibe. This was first released in last year, 2 years ago, in 2023, when Neil did his before and after, in which he re-recorded some songs that he had done before on just acoustic performances. This was one of those songs, If You Got Love. This was a trans outtake. I mean, this is one of those that was meant for trans, but I do think that like what we ended up getting with trans was better than this, the three that we did get. But a nice, good, upbeat song. Some great nails on this. Song called Raining in Paradise. Really nice. There's a musical element that's kind of upbeat and yachty and soft rocky. And then there's this, I think it's Nils on guitar that's making these like darker, more like ominous sounds. And the sort of rhythm, the overall rhythm of the song and the sound and this, I think it's a guitar. I think it's Nils on guitar. The singular guitar sound kind of conflict and are like sending different messages. But the song is called Raining in Paradise, so it works really, really well. Pretty good little song. Nils is absolutely killing it on this. We get a song called Big Pearl, which sounds almost like a little more serious, like you're narrating the exploits of someone named Big Pearl. There's every time they say Big Pearl, it just sounds kind of important and majestic. Kind of a cool little song. The myth of Big Pearl. Hold On to Your Love. Perfect, captures the vibe of all of this stuff. If you know it from trans, it's got the same vibe as all of this stuff. It works really well in this Johnny Island segment. Soul of a Woman is rough sound-wise. It's a really rough sounding live version. Pretty interesting to hear this early on. This is from Salinas, California at Sherwood Hall in 82. And then the very last song on here is Love Hotel, which had only been played live twice. This is one of those 2 times. This has more of a transy robotic vibe than it does an islandy vibe, but it kind of works with both. It kind of shows the overlap of these two very, very, very different sort of musical directions. And the fact that they both ended up on trans is just fascinating. But this is a really interesting listen. I'm not trying to sell Archives 3 to anybody. I have no stake in it. Nobody's paying me to promote it. But it's an amazing box set. And if you can come across it at a cheap rate and at a cheap price and you are a Neil fan, discs like this, the resequencing of this in the order it was recorded really shows Neil's progression, composing with the synclavier, with vocoder, with synths. This shows a whole other side and has a whole other timeline where we may have gotten something much more breezier and optimistic and not such a middle finger as Everybody's Rockin' seems to be, as unsatisfying as Everybody's Rockin'. This would have been a much more satisfying listen had this been dropped. And I think if you get all the material, including Laika Inca and the opening track on Trans, which is another Love title whose name I always forget, I think it's long enough for a full-length release, a little thing called Love. It would be cool to see this on it as a standalone just for the people who don't buy the box set, because it is a pretty interesting listen. But yeah, that's all I got. I'm just kind of rambling, trying to get people to check this stuff out. It is fascinating stuff. But yeah, that's all I got. If you've listened to this and check it out, let me know your thoughts on the matter. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those things. And go listen to Trans if you don't have the box set, because Trans is pretty fantastic. All right, that's all I got. I'm rambling. Peace. Talk to you later.